The thing about being the youngest of 3 siblings is that your accomplishments are always measured against theirs. By the time I came along, my older sister Victoria had already set the bar impossibly high, or so everyone thought. Victoria was the golden child. Valedictorian. Full scholarship to Princeton. PhD by 26. Assistant professor at Whitmore University by 29. She'd spent the last 6 years climbing the academic ladder with the same ruthless efficiency she'd applied to everything else in her life. I, on the other hand, was the family question mark. What exactly do you do again, Rachel? Uncle Tom asked me at the annual Whitmore family reunion, held every year at my parents' sprawling estate in Connecticut. He was genuinely curious, not malicious, which somehow made it worse. I work in higher education administration, I said, keeping my answer deliberately vague. Oh, like admissions? Student services. He nodded knowingly. That's nice. Steady work. Before I could respond, Victoria appeared at my elbow, wine glass in hand, that familiar condescending smile playing at her lips. Rachel's being modest, Uncle Tom. She's a teaching assistant. Or was it administrative assistant? I can never keep track. Neither, actually, I said calmly. Whatever it is, I'm sure it's very. Victoria paused as if searching for the right word, suitable for your skill level. Our cousin Jennifer laughed a little too loudly. She was Victoria's favorite, mainly because she hung on every word Victoria said and treated her like some kind of academic celebrity. Victoria was just telling us about her tenure application, Jennifer gushed. So exciting. A full professor at 35. That's incredibly young, isn't it? Very impressive, Uncle Tom agreed. Victoria swirled her wine, the picture of false modesty. Well, the application is still under review, of course. But my department chair is confident. I've published 43 papers in top-tier journals. My research on post-colonial literature has been cited over 2,000 times. The decision is really just a formality at this point. When will you hear back? Jennifer asked. The board meets next week for final approvals. But honestly, it's already decided. The chairman personally told my department chair that my application was the strongest they'd seen in years. I took a sip of my sparkling water and said nothing. Rachel, you must be so proud of your sister, Aunt Marie said kindly. She'd always been the gentlest of my mother's siblings, the one who tried to make everyone feel included. Of course, I said. Do you think you'll ever pursue a PhD? She asked. Follow in Victoria's footsteps? Victoria answered before I could. Academia isn't for everyone, Aunt Marie. It requires a certain level of intellectual rigor, a passion for research, a dedication to scholarship. Rachel's always been more practically minded. Nothing wrong with that. I'm perfectly happy with my current position, I said evenly. And what exactly is your position? My father asked, joining our little circle. He was a retired federal judge, a man who valued achievement and status above almost everything else. He'd never quite known what to make of me, his youngest daughter who'd chosen a path so different from Victoria's well-lit highway to academic glory. I work at Whitmore University, I said. In what capacity? He pressed. Administration. Victoria laughed. She's deliberately being vague because she's embarrassed. Rachel works in some back-office function. Processing forms or managing schedules or something. She doesn't even have faculty status. There's honor in all work, Aunt Marie said softly, but I could see the pity in her eyes. The conversation moved on as it always did, back to Victoria's accomplishments. Her latest publication in PMLA. Her invited lecture at Yale. Her growing reputation as one of the leading voices in her field. I stood at the periphery of the circle, sipping my water, listening to my sister hold court. This was how it had always been. Victoria was 3 years older than me, and from the moment I was born, I'd existed in her shadow. While she excelled at everything, piano, debate team, advanced mathematics, I was merely adequate. Not bad but not extraordinary. The kind of student who got A-minuses while Victoria brought home perfect scores. By the time I was in high school, the comparison was constant and exhausting. Why can't you be more like your sister? My father would ask when I brought home a report card with a B+ in chemistry. Victoria never got anything lower than an A. So I'd stopped trying to compete. I'd gone to a good but not prestigious university, Georgetown instead of an Ivy. I'd studied education policy instead of literature. I'd deliberately chosen a path that wouldn't invite comparison. And it had worked, in a way. Victoria had stopped seeing me as competition and started seeing me as irrelevant. Beneath notice. The little sister who'd failed to live up to her potential and settled for mediocrity. Which was exactly what I'd wanted her to think. Rachel, dear, could you help me bring out the appetizers? My mother asked, pulling me away from the circle. In the kitchen, she arranged canapes on a silver tray with practiced efficiency. You know your sister doesn't mean to be hurtful, she said without looking at me. Of course not, I replied neutrally. She's just excited about the tenure decision. It's a big moment in an academic career. You understand, don't you? I understand perfectly. My mother finally looked at me, her eyes searching. Are you happy, Rachel? In your work? Very happy. Because your father and I worry. You're 32 years old and you've never really established yourself. Not the way Victoria has. We just want to make sure you're not drifting. I'm not drifting, Mom. Because if you wanted to go back to school, get a graduate degree, we could help. It's not too late to have a real career. I smiled. I have a real career. She patted my hand. Of course you do, dear. Back in the garden, Victoria was surrounded by admirers. She'd changed into the role of distinguished academic like it was a second skin, gesturing expansively as she explained some complex theoretical concept, laughing at inside jokes about departmental politics, name-dropping famous scholars she'd collaborated with. The problem with most universities, she was saying as I approached with the appetizer tray, is that they don't value genuine scholarship anymore. It's all metrics and grant money and student evaluations. The actually important work, the groundbreaking research, the theoretical innovation, gets lost in bureaucratic nonsense. That must be so frustrating, Jennifer sympathized. It is. Thank God Whitmore is different. The administration actually understands the value of serious academic work. They give their faculty the freedom and resources to pursue real scholarship. I set down the tray and started to walk away. Of course, Rachel wouldn't understand that world, Victoria said, her voice carrying across the garden. Would you, Rachel? I turned back. Which world is that? The world of serious academia. Where intellectual achievement actually matters. Where teaching assistants like you, administrative assistants, whatever you are, exist to support the real scholars. The faculty members who are actually contributing to human knowledge. Teaching assistant is your level, Victoria continued, warming to her theme. Several relatives had gathered now, sensing drama. Real professors have talent. They have vision. They have something meaningful to say. You can't just wander into academia and expect to be taken seriously. It takes years of dedication, of sacrifice, of proving yourself worthy. I'm sure it does, I said quietly. I don't mean to be harsh, Victoria said, though her tone suggested otherwise. I just think you've never really understood what it takes to succeed in this field. You took the easy route. Administration. Support staff. There's nothing wrong with that. Someone has to do those jobs. But let's not pretend it's the same as being actual faculty. Our cousin Mark, who'd been drinking steadily since arriving, laughed. Damn, Victoria. Tell us how you really feel. I'm being honest. Rachel knows I love her. But someone needs to give her a reality check. She's been coasting for years, doing whatever minor administrative work she does, never pushing herself, never taking risks. And now she's 32 with no real accomplishments to show for it. The garden had gone quiet. Even the relatives who usually loved Victoria's confident proclamations looked uncomfortable. That's a bit harsh, Victoria, Aunt Marie ventured. It's honest, Victoria insisted. And Rachel needs to hear it. Because right now she's wasting her potential, what little potential she has, in some dead-end position at a university where she'll never be anything more than support staff. Meanwhile, people like me are doing the actual work of advancing human knowledge. My phone buzzed in my pocket, but I ignored it. The truth is, Victoria continued, academic hierarchies exist for a reason. Some people are meant to be scholars, to lead, to innovate. Other people are meant to support those efforts in background roles. And that's fine. We need both. But Rachel needs to accept which category she falls into and stop pretending she's something she's not. What exactly do you think I'm pretending to be? I asked, genuinely curious. Important, Victoria said flatly. Relevant. Like your work actually matters in the grand scheme of the university. Like you're somehow on the same level as actual faculty members. Jennifer nodded enthusiastically. It must be hard, she said to me with exaggerated sympathy, working at the same university where Victoria is such a star. Always being compared to her. Always falling short. I don't feel like I'm falling short, I said. Of course you don't, Victoria said. That's part of the problem. You've accepted mediocrity so completely that you don't even recognize it anymore. You've convinced yourself that your little administrative job is fulfilling, that it matters. But Rachel, and I'm saying this because I care, you're never going to be a real professor. You're never going to contribute anything meaningful to academia. You need to make peace with that. That's when her phone buzzed. Victoria pulled it out, glanced at the screen and froze. All the color drained from her face. Everything okay? Jennifer asked. Victoria stared at her phone like it had personally betrayed her. Her mouth opened and closed soundlessly. Victoria, my mother asked, concerned. What's wrong? My sister looked up at me, and for the first time in my entire life, I saw genuine fear in her eyes. This must be a mistake, she whispered. What must be a mistake? My father demanded. Victoria's hands were shaking as she held out her phone. My tenure application. It was denied. The garden erupted in shocked murmurs. That's impossible, Jennifer said. You said it was a formality. It was, Victoria insisted, her voice rising. The chairman told my department chair I was the strongest candidate in years. There must be some error. Some administrative mix-up. She was scrolling frantically through her phone now, her composure completely shattered. I need to call someone. I need to fix this. This is insane. My publication record is impeccable. My teaching evaluations are excellent. There's no reason. She stopped, her eyes widening as she read something on her screen. What? My mother asked. What does it say? The denial came directly from the board chairman, Victoria read, her voice hollow. Due to concerns about collegiality and professional conduct. Collegiality. My father frowned. What does that mean? It means, I said quietly, that someone on the board believes Victoria doesn't work well with others. That she's difficult. Unprofessional. Everyone turned to look at me. How would you know that? Victoria snapped. I pulled out my own phone and opened my email. Because I received a copy of the decision an hour ago. All board members do. The silence that followed was absolute. Board members, my father repeated slowly. I turned my phone around so everyone could see the email signature. Dr. Rachel Whitmore, Chairman, Board of Trustees, Whitmore University. Victoria made a sound like she'd been punched in the stomach. You're the chairman? Jennifer whispered. For the past 3 years, I confirmed. I was the youngest board chairman in the university's 150-year history. Appointed at 29. My mother sat down heavily on a garden bench. But you said you worked in administration, Uncle Tom said, confused. I do. The Board of Trustees oversees all university administration. We make decisions on budget allocation, strategic planning, major personnel decisions, and yes, tenure approvals. Victoria was staring at me like I was a stranger. You've been on the board this whole time? I've been at Whitmore for 10 years, I said. Started as an assistant to the previous chairman, Dr. Morrison, right after I got my master's degree from Georgetown. He mentored me, brought me into board meetings, taught me university governance. When he retired, he recommended me as his successor. The board voted unanimously to appoint me. But you never said anything, my mother breathed. You never asked, I replied simply. Every time we had a family gathering, you asked Victoria about her work and assumed I was doing something clerical. I tried to correct you a few times early on, but Victoria would talk over me, or the conversation would move on, or someone would make an assumption about my role and I'd just let them. Why? My father demanded. Why would you let us believe you were some low-level administrator? Because it was easier than dealing with Victoria's reaction, I said, looking at my sister. Because I knew that if you all understood what I actually did, it would create conflict. Victoria has built her entire identity around being the successful one, the accomplished one, the sister who made something of herself. I didn't want to take that from her. How considerate, Victoria said bitterly. I'm serious, I said. Victoria, you're a brilliant scholar. Your research is genuinely important. You're an excellent teacher. But you've spent the last decade treating everyone around you, including me, like they're beneath you. Like support staff and administrators are inferior beings who exist only to enable real faculty like you. That's not. It is, I interrupted. And it's created problems. Multiple problems. Which is why your tenure application was denied. The garden was so quiet I could hear birds chirping in the distance. You denied my tenure? Victoria's voice was barely above a whisper. You personally denied it? The board denied it, I corrected. Based on extensive documentation from your department chair, your colleagues and multiple staff members about your conduct over the past 6 years. I pulled up another file on my phone. Complaints from administrative staff about condescending treatment. Documentation of you referring to teaching assistants as glorified secretaries in departmental meetings. Multiple instances of you dismissing concerns from junior faculty members. A formal complaint from the library staff about your treatment of a reference librarian. That was a misunderstanding, Victoria protested weakly. There are 17 separate documented incidents, I continued. Your department chair, Dr. Kim, actually recommended against tenure in her private report to the board. She said, and I'm quoting here, Dr. Whitmore is an exceptional scholar whose personal conduct makes her unsuitable for a tenured position at this time. Dr. Kim recommended against me? Victoria looked genuinely shocked. But she told me the application was strong. She told you your research credentials were strong, I said. Which they are. But Victoria, tenure isn't just about publications. It's about being a positive, collaborative member of the academic community. And you've spent 6 years alienating almost everyone you work with. Jennifer stepped closer to Victoria protectively. This is ridiculous. You're punishing your own sister because of some petty complaints from sensitive staff members. I'm holding my sister to the same standards as every other faculty member, I said. Actually, I've been more lenient than I should have been. 2 other board members wanted to reject her application outright last year based on the accumulating complaints. I convinced them to give her another chance, to let her prove she could improve her conduct. And instead, my mother said slowly, understanding dawning, she came here today and did exactly what they were complaining about. I nodded, treating me like I'm a failure, dismissing my work, publicly stating that administrators and support staff are inferior to real faculty. Victoria's face had gone from white to red. So this is revenge. I hurt your feelings, so you destroyed my career. I didn't destroy your career, I said calmly. The denial isn't permanent. You can reapply in 2 years if you demonstrate improved collegiality and professional conduct. The board was very clear about that in the decision letter. 2 years. Victoria's voice cracked. Do you know what this will do to my reputation? To my career trajectory? I'll be the only person in my cohort without tenure. Everyone will know I was rejected. Yes, I agreed. Just like everyone in your department has known for years that you treat people badly. The difference is now there are professional consequences for that behavior. My father found his voice. Rachel, this seems extraordinarily harsh. Victoria made some unkind comments, yes, but to deny her tenure. Dad, those unkind comments are part of a years-long pattern. I've been receiving complaints about Victoria's conduct for the past 3 years. From staff members who feel belittled. From junior faculty who feel dismissed. From graduate students who feel degraded. I looked at my sister. Victoria, you told a PhD student last semester that her research was embarrassingly simplistic in front of the entire seminar. She filed a formal complaint. You told your department's administrative coordinator that a trained monkey could do her job when she made a scheduling error. You've created a hostile work environment for multiple people. I have high standards, Victoria said desperately. I push people to be better. There's a difference between high standards and cruelty, I said. And you've crossed that line repeatedly. Aunt Marie spoke up quietly. Rachel, how long have you been the board chairman? 3 years. And you've been dealing with complaints about Victoria that whole time? Yes. And you never said anything? Never warned her. I met my sister's eyes. I tried. 2 years ago at Christmas, I mentioned that university governance was evolving to focus more on faculty conduct and collegiality. Victoria said it was bureaucratic nonsense that had nothing to do with real scholars. Last year at this same reunion, I suggested that treating staff with respect was important. Victoria laughed and said I was too sensitive and didn't understand how academia worked. You could have been direct, Victoria accused. You could have explicitly told me you were on the board, that my job was at risk. You're right, I acknowledged. I should have been more direct. I should have forced the conversation even though you always shut it down. I should have made you understand that your behavior was jeopardizing your career. But you didn't. No, I didn't. Because part of me, I paused, choosing my words carefully. Part of me wanted to see if you'd figure it out on your own. If you'd realize that the administrative bureaucrats you looked down on were actually the people who had power over your career. If you'd learned to treat people with basic respect before it was too late. That's cruel, Jennifer said. Maybe, I agreed. Or maybe it's letting someone experience the natural consequences of their choices. Victoria has spent her entire life being told she's brilliant, special, destined for greatness. Everyone, including me, has made excuses for her bad behavior because her research is so good. But at some point, being brilliant doesn't excuse being unkind. My father cleared his throat. So what happens now? Now Victoria decides whether she wants to use the next 2 years to demonstrate professional growth, or whether she wants to look for a position elsewhere. Several other universities have expressed interest in recruiting her, though they'll certainly ask why she didn't get tenure at Whitmore. And you'll tell them what? Victoria asked bitterly. That I'm a horrible person who doesn't deserve an academic career? If they ask for a reference, I'll tell them the truth. That you're an exceptional scholar with significant interpersonal challenges that need to be addressed. I won't sabotage your career, Victoria. But I won't lie for you either. The party had completely fallen apart now. Relatives were making excuses to leave, uncomfortable with the family drama they'd witnessed. My parents looked shell-shocked, trying to reconcile their understanding of both their daughters with this new reality. Victoria stood frozen in the center of it all, her phone still clutched in her hand, her entire identity crumbling around her. I need to go, she finally said. I need to figure out what to do. She walked toward the house, then stopped and turned back to me. You know what the worst part is? Not that you denied my tenure. Not even that you let me humiliate myself at this party. The worst part is that I genuinely believed you were nobody. That you were a failure. That I was the only one of us who'd made something of herself. I know, I said softly. And you let me believe it. Yes. She shook her head slowly. I don't know if I can forgive you for that. I understand. She left, and Jennifer followed after shooting me a venomous look. The remaining relatives dispersed quietly, leaving me alone in the garden with my parents. Well, my mother said eventually. This has been quite a revelation. I'm sorry it came out this way, I said. My father was studying me like I was a case file he needed to analyze. 3 years as board chairman. At 32 years old. That's actually quite impressive. Thank you. Why didn't you tell us? I sat down on the bench next to my mother. Because it would have changed everything. You would have started comparing us differently. Victoria would have felt threatened. Every family gathering would have become a competition about who was more successful. I just wanted to do my work without it becoming a thing. But it became a thing anyway, my mother pointed out. Yes. Because Victoria's behavior made it a thing. If she'd been even minimally professional, if she'd treated people with basic respect, she would have gotten tenure and none of this would have come out. My father sat down heavily. I owe you an apology, Rachel. We all do. We've been dismissive of your career, your accomplishments. We assumed. You assumed exactly what I wanted you to assume, I interrupted. I'm not blameless here. I could have been more forthcoming. I chose not to be. Still, he said. We should have asked. We should have cared enough to find out what you actually do. We sat in silence for a long moment. What will happen to Victoria? My mother asked quietly. Really? That depends on her, I said honestly. If she uses this as a wake-up call, if she genuinely works on treating people better, she can reapply and probably get tenure. The board isn't trying to end her career. We're trying to make her understand that scholarship alone isn't enough. And if she doesn't change? Then she'll probably take a position at another university, treat people there the same way and eventually face the same consequences. Or she'll luck out and find an institution that doesn't care about collegiality as long as the publications keep coming. My mother took my hand. Are you happy? In your work? Very happy, I said, and this time I knew she believed me. Running a university at your age, that must be incredibly stressful. It is. But it's also rewarding. I get to shape policy, support innovative programs, help faculty and students succeed. It's challenging and meaningful and exactly what I want to be doing. My father nodded slowly. I'm proud of you, Rachel. I should have said that before. Thank you, Dad. As the sun set over the garden, I thought about Victoria. About the sister who'd been so certain of her superiority, so convinced of her importance, that she'd never bothered to look closely at the people around her. Who'd built her self-worth on being better than everyone else, especially better than me. And I thought about all the graduate students and staff members who'd filed complaints over the years. People who'd been hurt by her casual cruelty, her thoughtless dismissals, her conviction that some people just mattered more than others. I'd given her every chance to change. Every opportunity to recognize that her behavior was problematic. And she'd missed them all because she'd been too busy feeling superior to notice. Maybe in 2 years she'd reapply. Maybe she'd have learned something. Or maybe she'd spend the rest of her career convinced that I'd destroyed her out of spite, never understanding that she'd destroyed herself through 1,000 small acts of unkindness. Either way, I'd done my job. And tomorrow I'd go back to the office and continue doing it. Because that's what board chairmen do. We make the hard decisions. We hold people accountable. And we build institutions where everyone, from the most distinguished professor to the newest administrative assistant, is treated with dignity and respect. Even if it means denying your own sister's tenure application. Especially then.